The Haunting of the H. Holmes Murder Castle, USA 1890 seconds. Have you ever walked past a building and felt something was wrong? Not because of its architecture or the way the windows seemed too dark or the cracks in the stone, but something deeper, like the walls themselves remembered screams. Like the bricks still held breathless terror. This is a story about such a building. They called it the Murder Castle, and it wasn't just a nickname. It was a death trap by design, built by one of America's first known serial killers, Dr. Henry Howard Holmes. This Chicago hotel promised luxury and comfort to the unsuspecting. But behind its walls lurked sliding panels, trapdoors, gas chambers, dissection rooms, and furnaces. Between 1891 and 1894, dozens, maybe hundreds of victims walked in. Few ever came out, but the story didn't end when Holmes was caught. No. Some say the castle never stopped feeding, because when evil builds a home, it doesn't leave quietly. Welcome to the haunting of H. Holmes Murder Castle. Chapter 1. The Man Behind the Monster. Herman Webster Mudgett, later known as Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, was born in Gilmanton, New Hampshire in 1861. Even as a child, Holmes exhibited signs of a darker nature, a chilling detachment, an unnerving fascination with death and anatomy. While other children played games and laughed freely, Holmes studied skeletons and dissected animals in secret, his actions hidden beneath a veil of quiet politeness and intellectual curiosity. His unsettling demeanor often made those around him uneasy. Teachers remarked on his brilliant mind but noticed his strange emotional absence. Classmates felt discomfort around him, as though sensing a hidden threat lurking beneath his seemingly innocent façade. Holmes absorbed medical knowledge voraciously, treating the intricacies of the human body as mere puzzles to solve, devoid of empathy or compassion. In 1878, Holmes enrolled in medical school at the University of Michigan, where his morbid fascination deepened further. Surrounded by cadavers and the tools of medical examination, Holmes quickly became adept at manipulating bodies. He participated in unethical activities, stealing bodies, mutilating them to fake accidental deaths, and claiming fraudulent insurance payouts. Upon graduating, Holmes realized he needed a new identity, a fresh start away from the whispers and suspicions that trailed behind him. Thus, Dr. Henry Howard Holmes was born, a charismatic, respectable doctor who moved effortlessly through society's upper circles. Holmes saw Chicago as a city ripe with opportunity, a bustling metropolis teeming with newcomers who could easily vanish without notice. Arriving in Chicago in 1886, Holmes swiftly acquired a pharmacy in Englewood, conveniently located across from an empty lot. The lot became the site of his grandest and most sinister ambition, a building known as the Murder Castle. Holmes envisioned it as a luxurious hotel, meticulously designed to attract and ensnare unsuspecting victims. Construction of the castle began under Holmes' close supervision. Workers were frequently dismissed, ensuring no one comprehended the full layout. Corridors twisted into dead ends, rooms contained hidden compartments and secret doors, and passageways were designed to confuse and trap guests. Holmes' attention to detail was chillingly precise, each architectural decision made to facilitate his horrific plans. Within the walls of the castle, Holmes created hidden chambers with airtight doors and concealed gas lines, allowing him to silently suffocate his victims. Some rooms featured trapdoors beneath furniture, leading directly to the basement, a subterranean laboratory equipped with acid vats, quicklime pits, surgical tables, and a large furnace. This basement was the heart of Holmes' grisly operation, a place designed explicitly for the efficient disposal of bodies and evidence. Holmes advertised his hotel extensively, targeting visitors traveling to Chicago for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition. Hundreds of guests arrived, enticed by the promise of comfortable accommodations and affordable rates. Holmes greeted each personally, his charm masking the predator lurking beneath. As visitors settled in, Holmes monitored them through peepholes and secret passages, delighting in their growing unease as they encountered locked doors and inexplicable architectural oddities. Guests vanished frequently, yet Holmes maintained plausible deniability, assuring worried family members with convincing stories of sudden departures or new adventures. Letters from relatives were answered with comforting fabrications penned by Holmes himself, effectively quelling suspicion. As the fair approached, the castle operated with horrifying efficiency. Rooms became traps, corridors echoed with silent screams, and Holmes' meticulous methods ensured no trace remained of his victims. The building itself seemed to absorb the terror inflicted within its walls, becoming an entity of darkness and despair, pulsating silently with each new act of violence. Despite growing whispers among the locals, Holmes easily deflected suspicion. Through sheer charisma and calculated deception, Chicago, preoccupied with the Exposition, remained oblivious to the horrors hidden behind the elegant façade of the Murder Castle. The castle's sinister reputation grew quietly, its rooms eagerly awaiting new prey. Holmes stood ready, his eyes cold with anticipation, confident in his ability to maintain control. The world's Columbian Exposition would soon flood Chicago with visitors, providing ample opportunity for the castle to feed its insatiable hunger. Chapter 2, The Castle of Deception. As the world's Columbian Exposition of 1893 drew near, Chicago pulsed with excitement and ambition. It was a city eager to display its progress and innovation to the world. Yet amidst this atmosphere of hope and prosperity, a building rose silently, its true intentions masked beneath a facade of grandeur and luxury. The infamous Murder Castle. Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, charismatic and calculating, had carefully selected Englewood as the site for his sinister masterpiece. Located conveniently across from his pharmacy, the castle promised opulence to travelers flocking to the fair. But Holmes' true vision was hidden from sight, crafted meticulously with chilling precision. From its inception, Holmes managed construction with meticulous secrecy. Workers were rotated frequently, fired without explanation, ensuring no one comprehended the labyrinthine interior. The castle's true purpose was obscured beneath an architectural maze. Corridors ended abruptly, staircases ascended to nowhere, and hallways twisted into confusing patterns designed specifically to trap and disorient. The deceptive layout was just the beginning. Hidden behind the luxurious wallpaper and elegant furnishings lay numerous chambers designed explicitly for murder. Gas fixtures concealed within the walls allowed Holmes to silently suffocate his victims from adjacent rooms. Secret doors and trap floors provided discreet pathways to dispose of bodies quickly, leaving no trace behind. Beneath the castle lay the basement, Holmes' private domain of horrors. It was here, concealed from prying eyes, that he established his gruesome laboratory. Surgical tables, neatly arranged instruments, acid-filled vats, quicklime pits, and an industrial furnace stood ready. These macabre tools were carefully chosen to efficiently erase evidence, a testament to Holmes' meticulous, cold-hearted efficiency. Holmes advertised his hotel extensively, promoting comfort and convenience at affordable prices. Visitors, especially young women seeking employment opportunities and lone travelers arriving for the fair, flocked to the castle, oblivious to its sinister intent. Holmes greeted each guest personally, his polished manners masking a calculating predator beneath. Once guests settled in, Holmes watched discreetly through hidden peepholes, savoring their initial comfort and eventual bewilderment as they discovered locked doors and confusing pathways. He manipulated every detail, relishing the escalating fear and panic that gripped those trapped within his carefully crafted maze. Guests disappeared regularly, leaving behind scant belongings and unanswered questions. Holmes skillfully deflected suspicions, crafting plausible stories of spontaneous departures or unexpected adventures. Families seeking loved ones received reassuring correspondence, penned convincingly by Holmes himself, effortlessly quieting their fears, despite growing rumors among neighbors. Holmes remained outwardly unperturbed. His charm and intellect allowed him to easily dismiss concerns, convincingly reassuring anyone who dared question the hotel's activities. Chicago, distracted by the fervent excitement of the approaching exposition, barely noticed the quiet terror unfolding within its midst, yet inside the castle the horrors continued unabated. Victims found themselves trapped within airtight rooms, helpless as gas seeped silently through hidden vents, or they plummeted suddenly through concealed trapdoors into darkness. Each victim's fear and anguish seemed to seep into the very walls, embedding the castle with an aura of suffering and despair. Holmes meticulously documented each act, taking detailed notes of methods and outcomes. He refined his approaches, learning from each dark experiment, striving always for greater efficiency and control. To Holmes, the castle was more than just a building, it was a living entity, fueled by terror and sustained by meticulous cruelty. As the world's Columbian Exposition commenced, the castle stood ready, its facade invitingly elegant, concealing unimaginable darkness within. Visitors continued to arrive, blissfully unaware that their temporary refuge was in reality an elaborate trap from which escape was nearly impossible. Holmes' dark reputation quietly grew among those who sensed something amiss, yet the city's preoccupation with the fair ensured his activities remained hidden beneath a veneer of normalcy. Holmes thrived on the obliviousness of those around him, confident in his ability to control the narrative and suppress suspicion. The Murder Castle had become a monument to Holmes' sinister brilliance, a chilling testament to his cold-hearted meticulousness and insatiable hunger for control. Its silent halls echoed with the unseen anguish of countless victims, each room bearing silent witness to horrors that would haunt the city's history forever. As Holmes stood awaiting the next wave of unsuspecting guests, his cold eyes gleamed with anticipation. The castle's doors remained open, welcoming new prey into its luxurious embrace, utterly oblivious to the sinister fate awaiting them within. Chapter 3. Trapped in the Labyrinth. The world's Columbian Exposition of 1893 brought countless hopeful visitors to Chicago, each one drawn by the promise of wonder, excitement, and discovery. For many, their first impression of the city was the inviting elegance of Holmes' Hotel, the Murder Castle. Beautifully adorned with luxurious furnishings, plush carpets, and tasteful decor, it seemed the ideal lodging for travelers eager to enjoy the city's grandeur. Yet beneath its charming veneer lay a meticulously crafted nightmare. As guests settled into their rooms, they felt nothing unusual at first. Holmes had designed the castle so masterfully that even the most observant visitors failed to detect the sinister truth behind its walls. Each room appeared welcoming, comfortable, and secure until suddenly and without warning their world turned upside down. Guests quickly discovered that corridors twisted endlessly, looping back upon themselves in impossible patterns. Doors that opened easily moments before now refused to budge, firmly locked from the outside. Windows, initially promising fresh air and a view of the bustling city, turned out to be cleverly painted illusions, unyielding and impenetrable. Holmes watched discreetly from behind the castle's hidden peepholes and secret observation points, savoring every nuance of his victims' growing confusion and panic. He meticulously documented their reactions: fear, desperation, bewilderment, treating them as clinical observations rather than human suffering. To him, each victim was an experiment, their terror feeding his insatiable curiosity. In certain rooms, unsuspecting guests heard a subtle hissing sound as invisible gas seeped slowly into the space. Panic rose as they struggled for breath, clawing desperately at walls that offered no escape. Others felt the floor beneath them give way suddenly, plunging them into pitch-black chutes leading directly into the horrific depths below. These unfortunate souls found themselves in Holmes' basement, a terrifying laboratory where no one ever emerged alive. Surgical tables awaited them, gleaming ominously under dim gaslights. Holmes conducted his gruesome experiments meticulously, recording precise details of each procedure. Victims' cries were absorbed by soundproofed walls, their pleas for mercy echoing unheard as Holmes dissected, examined, and ultimately disposed of their remains with chilling efficiency. Above ground, families and friends searched anxiously for missing loved ones, flooding the hotel with inquiries. Holmes responded personally to each, crafting believable narratives to ease their concerns. Letters filled with lies of unexpected departures, new adventures, or sudden illnesses convincingly quieted worried minds, maintaining his facade of innocence. Local rumors intensified as disappearances became increasingly frequent, yet Holmes deflected suspicion expertly, attributing claims to jealous competitors or hysterical imaginations. He charmed skeptical officials, calming their doubts and ensuring the city's focus remained firmly fixed on the wonders of the Exposition, yet within the castle the atmosphere darkened steadily. Holmes' systematic cruelty intensified with each victim, emboldened by his successful evasions. Guests who managed to evade the initial traps found themselves wandering aimlessly, hopelessly lost within the castle's deliberately disorienting maze. Corridors twisted unexpectedly, rooms shifted positions, and lights flickered erratically, deepening the disorientation and despair. Trapped visitors began hearing whispers, faint echoes of suffering emanating from behind seemingly solid walls. Shadows seemed to move independently, following their every step, taunting them with silent menace. Fear eroded their sanity as hours turned into days and hope slowly faded. Holmes reveled in their psychological torment. Watching from hidden vantage points, he relished their deteriorating mental state, meticulously recording each stage of their emotional breakdown. His obsession with control and power grew stronger with every trapped soul, fueling the castle's dark presence. Over time, the castle itself seemed to absorb the terror of its victims. Each wall became a repository of silent screams, every corridor a pathway of despair. The building developed an oppressive living aura, its very bricks soaked in the agony of countless souls. Holmes' architectural masterpiece had evolved into a living entity, a monstrous creation feeding relentlessly on fear and suffering. Yet the city outside remained oblivious, captivated by the glamour of the World's Fair. Visitors continued to pour into the hotel, their cheerful excitement masking the chilling fate awaiting them within. Holmes maintained his facade effortlessly, presenting himself as a gracious host dedicated to the comfort of his guests. The castle's labyrinth continued claiming victims silently, growing ever more insidious and powerful. Holmes watched his creation flourish, confident and unrepentant. The labyrinth he had designed was perfect, an inescapable trap from which no one emerged unscathed. As the fair continued, the hotel doors remained invitingly open, promising refuge and comfort to travelers. Yet behind the welcoming facade lay only darkness, an endless maze of horror meticulously orchestrated by a master manipulator whose chilling legacy would haunt Chicago forever. Chapter 4: Descent into Darkness. As the number of disappearances rose, so did whispers within the community. Yet Holmes remained unshaken, his charisma and calculated charm insulating him from scrutiny. To the authorities and neighbors alike, Holmes was a well-respected businessman, a model citizen incapable of sinister deeds. Inside the murder castle, however, the nightmare grew increasingly intense. Those who survived the initial traps found themselves descending deeper into unimaginable horror. Every passage, corridor, and hidden room seemed to pulse with sinister energy, each step leading further away from any hope of escape. Victims trapped within the castle quickly realized that conventional rules of architecture and reality no longer applied. Walls shifted silently, corridors changed directions inexplicably, and stairways rotated and rearranged themselves. Rooms previously visited became entirely different spaces upon return, disorienting and frightening the trapped guests further. Holmes reveled in this psychological torture. Watching from hidden rooms and passages, he observed every reaction, meticulously recording the details of their descent into madness. His clinical precision was chilling. Each victim's fear was merely data to him, each desperate attempt to escape another fascinating experiment. In some rooms, ceilings slowly lowered, the walls closing in with excruciating patience, forcing victims to scramble desperately for non-existent exits. Other chambers filled gradually with freezing water, submerging victims inch by inch as they clawed helplessly at impenetrable surfaces, their screams absorbed by soundproofed walls. Below ground, the basement waited, a sinister heart beating. At the core of Holmes' nightmare creation, those unfortunate enough to find themselves there faced horrors beyond imagination. Surgical tables gleamed menacingly, equipped with restraints to immobilize terrified victims. Tools meticulously arranged, surgical blades, saws, and other devices designed explicitly for precision and pain, awaited Holmes' cold touch. Acid-filled vats stood ready to dissolve flesh and bone, and quicklime pits expedited the decomposition of evidence. An industrial furnace, large enough to erase any trace of human remains, dominated the dimly lit room. Victims' final moments were often spent witnessing the ghastly preparations made explicitly for their disposal. The oppressive atmosphere of the basement was palpable, a place where despair hung thick in the air, the scent of chemicals and death permeating every corner. Holmes moved comfortably within this domain, calmly methodical, unaffected by the anguish he inflicted upon his captives. As weeks turned to months, the frequency and brutality of Holmes' actions escalated. His obsession grew insatiable, his methods increasingly elaborate and sadistic. Each new victim represented a fresh challenge, another opportunity to test his ingenious devices and refine his cruel techniques. Meanwhile, above ground, the city of Chicago celebrated its progress, oblivious to the atrocities occurring beneath their feet. Families grew desperate and rumors swirled, but Holmes maintained his fod flawlessly, charmingly reassuring anyone who dared question him. Yet the castle itself seemed to grow stronger, nourished by the anguish and terror of its countless victims. Its walls thickened with silent suffering, the building itself becoming a sentient monument to human cruelty. Shadows danced malevolently, whispers filled empty rooms, and the air grew heavier with each passing day. Victims who lingered in its corridors began to lose their grip on reality, tormented by hallucinations, ghostly apparitions, and the haunting echoes of past victims' final moments. The line between life and death blurred within the castle, the boundaries of sanity stretched beyond breaking. Holmes watched this evolution with satisfaction, fascinated by the depths of human endurance and despair. To him, the castle was more than just a building. It was a living experiment, continually evolving and adapting to the pain it consumed. Its sinister influence spread silently, weaving itself into the very fabric of the city's subconscious. Despite mounting suspicions, Holmes confidently deflected inquiries, maintaining his mask of innocence with calculated ease. Authorities, distracted by the World's Fair and lacking concrete evidence, hesitated to act decisively. The murder castle continued its grim work uninterrupted, the city's ignorance proving to be Holmes' greatest ally. As the fair reached its peak, visitors continued to stream into the castle, each one oblivious to the horrors awaiting them within. The elegant exterior betrayed nothing of the darkness concealed beneath, promising only comfort and security to weary travelers. Holmes, ever watchful, anticipated their arrival with cold excitement, preparing to guide them deeper into his ever-evolving maze of terror. The castle, hungry and unyielding, stood ready to welcome its next guests, its doors opening wide to reveal nothing but darkness beyond. Chapter 5. The investigation begins. As the city of Chicago buzzed with excitement and progress, slowly but surely a quiet concern began to ripple through the community. Families searching desperately for their missing loved ones converged upon police stations, pressing for action and answers. The rising number of missing persons reports became too glaring to ignore, although Holmes continued to maintain his outward facade of charm and innocence. Suspicion began to mount. Police initially dismissed the complaints, attributing the disappearances to the transient nature of the world's Columbian Exposition. They reasoned many visitors simply chose not to return home, captivated by the allure of new opportunities in a thriving city. Yet pressure from increasingly vocal families forced authorities to reconsider. Detective William Erickson, an experienced officer known for his intuition and determination, took notice. Something about the sheer number of missing cases troubled him deeply. He began compiling details, interviewing families, and piecing together timelines. Each inquiry drew him closer to a disturbing pattern. Many of those missing had one common factor: they had last been seen near or staying at Holmes' hotel. With a growing sense of urgency, Erickson discreetly began to investigate Holmes himself. His initial inquiries into Holmes' background yielded troubling results. Previous business associates, tenants, and employees had vanished mysteriously or left abruptly. Erickson uncovered layers of deceit, forged documents, and questionable financial dealings. Holmes' reputation as a respectable businessman began to crumble under Erickson's relentless scrutiny. Meanwhile, Holmes remained blissfully unaware of the deepening investigation. He continued his grim experiments within the castle, his obsession escalating dangerously. The frequency and brutality of his acts grew, emboldened by his perceived invincibility. Each new victim represented another chance to push the limits of human suffering, fueling his insatiable curiosity and cruelty inside the castle. Victims trapped in Holmes' cruel maze experienced horrors that defied belief. Rooms systematically suffocated or crushed their occupants, hidden mechanisms designed to slowly extinguish life. Gas seeped invisibly into chambers, quietly robbing victims of breath. Secret passageways and trapdoors delivered unsuspecting guests into the heart of Holmes' basement laboratory, where unimaginable fates awaited them. Detective Erickson, driven by grim determination, secretly gathered a small, trusted team to pursue leads discreetly. They conducted surveillance on the hotel, interviewed former workers who spoke fearfully of strange occurrences, and uncovered disturbing purchase records: quantities of acid, surgical tools, and chemicals suspiciously out of place for an ordinary hotel. Erickson's investigation led him deeper into the darkness surrounding Holmes, yet concrete evidence remained elusive. Frustration grew within the detective, even as his instincts screamed the truth: Holmes was responsible for the disappearances. Still, Holmes' composure never wavered. He continued to deflect inquiries skillfully, presenting plausible explanations and maintaining his facade. However, the castle itself seemed to sense the investigation tightening around it. Its malevolent energy intensified, walls reverberating with the agony of its victims, shadows moving with greater malice, and whispered voices echoing with growing urgency. The building itself seemed desperate, aware that its dark secrets were nearing exposure. The pressure began to show subtle cracks in Holmes' composed exterior. He became increasingly paranoid, secretly reinforcing the castle's defenses and meticulously eradicating evidence. But no matter how careful he was, small mistakes began to emerge: overlooked details, discrepancies in his carefully crafted stories, and growing anxiety that even his formidable intellect could not fully mask. Erickson capitalized on these mistakes, narrowing his focus relentlessly. Witnesses previously silenced by fear now came forward cautiously, sharing troubling experiences involving Holmes and the hotel. Stories of strange noises, screams in the night, and sudden, unexplained departures began to pile up, painting a chilling portrait of the hotel's true nature. The detective's determination finally began to yield results. Armed with mounting evidence and undeniable patterns linking Holmes to the disappearances, Erickson prepared his team for decisive action. The castle's dark legacy was approaching its moment of reckoning, its hidden horrors poised to be dragged into the light. Inside, Holmes grew increasingly desperate, sensing the investigation closing in around him. The castle, once his masterpiece of deception and terror, now threatened to become his prison. The walls that had concealed his atrocities so perfectly now seemed poised to betray him, ready to reveal the unspeakable truths hidden within. The stage was set for a confrontation between Holmes' sinister genius and Erickson's unwavering determination. As the detectives' team readied themselves, unaware of the full extent of the horrors awaiting them, Holmes braced for the final battle to protect his dark empire. The investigation had begun, and with it the countdown to the castle's inevitable exposure and Holmes' ultimate reckoning. Chapter 6. The walls close in. Detective Erickson's investigation had reached a critical turning point. Evidence mounted steadily, connecting Holmes to numerous disappearances. Yet despite this growing pressure, Holmes continued his macabre activities, confident in his ability to elude justice. Within the castle's dark corridors, however, something shifted. A palpable tension permeated the building, as if the walls themselves sensed impending discovery. Holmes grew increasingly meticulous and paranoid. He spent hours reinforcing hidden compartments, destroying documents, and scrubbing every conceivable surface with chemicals to eliminate traces of his victims. The castle, once his domain of absolute control, began to feel oppressive even to him, its shadowy rooms echoing ominously with past atrocities. Meanwhile, Detective Erickson intensified his surveillance. His team discreetly interviewed more former staff, each testimony adding disturbing details about secret passages, strange late-night deliveries, and unsettling encounters with Holmes. Erickson now knew without doubt that the castle was the epicenter of unspeakable horrors. Determined to confront Holmes directly, Erickson secured a search warrant based on the growing body of circumstantial evidence. But before he could execute it, he received an anonymous tip. A former employee, terrified but resolved, revealed critical insights about the castle's concealed rooms and hidden passageways. Armed with this vital information, Erickson meticulously planned the raid, aware of the potential danger awaiting them inside. Holmes, unaware of the impending raid but sensing increasing scrutiny, hastily prepared contingency plans. He began to move valuables, documents, and other incriminating materials to hidden compartments scattered throughout the castle. Despite his precautions, Holmes could not shake the unsettling feeling that the walls were closing in inside the castle. Victims still trapped within its cruel maze faced escalating horrors. Rooms filled with noxious gases, corridors transformed unpredictably, and hidden mechanisms designed explicitly to inflict psychological and physical torment were activated, more frequently driven by Holmes' growing desperation. One evening, Holmes received an urgent message warning him of Erickson's imminent raid. Panic surged within him, driving him into a frenzy of activity. He dashed from room to room, sealing off entrances, activating deadly traps, and destroying remaining evidence. Yet no matter how swiftly he worked, Holmes knew he could not completely erase the castle's dark history. When Erickson's team arrived at dawn, the castle loomed menacingly, its imposing facade concealing the horrors within. The team advanced cautiously, aware that Holmes' ingenuity posed a constant threat. Once inside, they quickly realized the complexity and danger of the castle's layout. Each corridor twisted deceptively, rooms appeared and disappeared behind. Hidden panels and trapdoors lurked beneath seemingly solid floors. Detective Erickson, leading the search, uncovered room after room filled with evidence of unimaginable cruelty, blood-stained surgical instruments, vats of acid, human bones meticulously catalogued and stored. Each discovery deepened his horror and resolve, compelling him onward despite the increasing danger. As the investigation progressed, Holmes' carefully concealed traps were triggered, injuring several officers. The castle itself seemed determined to defend its master, its hidden mechanisms working relentlessly to thwart their progress. Erickson pressed forward, driven by grim determination, intent on uncovering every hidden horror. Meanwhile, Holmes desperately navigated the secret corridors, attempting to evade capture. Each step became fraught with peril as he activated and narrowly avoided his own deadly traps. His panic deepened with each moment, the very castle he created now a labyrinthine prison closing in around him. Finally, Erickson cornered Holmes within a concealed chamber deep beneath the castle. The confrontation was tense, the air charged with menace. Holmes, cornered yet defiant, attempted to reason and charm his way free, but Erickson remained unwavering. With a cold stare, the detective pronounced Holmes' reign of terror over S. Holmes was led from the castle. The building seemed to sigh in relief, its oppressive energy momentarily easing. Yet Erickson and his team understood their task was far from finished. The castle still held secrets, evidence that needed cataloging, victims needing identification, and hidden passages requiring thorough exploration. Days turned into weeks. As investigators meticulously documented the castle's horrors, public outrage grew as chilling details emerged, newspapers sensationalizing Holmes' atrocities. Families finally received answers, painful yet necessary, about the fates of their missing loved ones. Holmes, now behind bars, awaited trial, his reputation irrevocably shattered. Yet even imprisoned, his chilling presence haunted the city. Rumors persisted that the castle, though abandoned, still whispered with the voices of those it claimed. Its dark legacy lingered, a grim reminder of the monstrous capability hidden within human nature. S. Erickson concluded his investigation. He reflected soberly on the horrors he'd witnessed. The castle had been built upon deception, cruelty, and fear, a place where innocence had been systematically extinguished. Now exposed, it stood silent, a monument to the darkest depths of humanity. Yet despite the horrors uncovered, Erickson couldn't shake the unsettling feeling that the castle's malevolent presence still lingered, patiently waiting, eternally. Hungry for new victims to ensnare. Chapter 7, The Trial of Dr. Holmes. With Holmes finally captured, the city of Chicago and indeed the nation awaited the trial with fevered anticipation. The revelations from the Murder Castle investigation had sent shockwaves through society, and public outcry for justice was deafening. Holmes, meanwhile, sat in his cell, his once untouchable demeanor now shadowed by a grim resignation, yet still possessing a disturbing calmness. The trial began on a bitterly cold morning, with crowds gathered outside the courthouse, eager to glimpse the man who had become synonymous with unspeakable cruelty. Journalists crowded the courtroom, their pens poised to document every sordid detail. Families of the victims filled the gallery, their faces etched with grief and determination, silently demanding justice. Holmes appeared composed, impeccably dressed, and unsettlingly serene. He watched impassively as the prosecution presented its case, detailing the chilling discoveries within the Murder Castle. Witnesses testified to the horrific scenes encountered: blood-stained instruments, vats of acid, meticulously catalogued human remains, and sinister contraptions designed explicitly for torture and murder. As the trial progressed, the prosecution painted a harrowing picture of Holmes, a meticulous, cold-hearted predator who preyed upon the vulnerable and unsuspecting. They presented damning testimonies from former employees and terrified survivors who had narrowly escaped Holmes' grasp. Each revelation deepened the court's horror, cementing Holmes' monstrous legacy. Holmes' defense, led by a capable but increasingly disillusioned attorney, attempted to cast doubt on the evidence, citing lack of direct eyewitnesses to the murders. However, the sheer weight and consistency of circumstantial evidence were overwhelming. Holmes himself displayed no remorse, merely observing the proceedings with detached interest, occasionally jotting notes or whispering calmly to his counsel, detective. Erickson's testimony proved pivotal, providing clear, methodical accounts of the meticulous investigation, the discoveries made within the castle, and the undeniable connections between Holmes and his victims. Erickson spoke with solemn authority, his voice unwavering as he recounted the horrors he had uncovered. His testimony resonated profoundly, solidifying the prosecution's case. As the trial neared its conclusion, Holmes unexpectedly requested to address the court. A hush fell over the room as he rose slowly, his presence commanding despite the chains that bound him. In measured tones, Holmes delivered a chillingly eloquent speech, neither admitting nor denying guilt, but rather expressing a disturbingly clinical fascination with the case against him. He discussed human nature, morality, and the thin line between genius and madness, leaving listeners both horrified and mesmerized. After lengthy deliberation, the jury returned with a swift verdict: guilty on all counts. The courtroom erupted with cries of relief and anger from victims' families, a cathartic release after months of tension and grief. Holmes received the verdict stoically, betraying no emotion, only offering a slight nod in acknowledgement. The judge sentenced Holmes to death by hanging, a verdict met with widespread approval. Yet even as justice was declared, an unsettling sense lingered. Holmes' calm demeanor, his unsettling speech, and the enigmatic, almost philosophical reflections he shared during the trial left an indelible mark on everyone present. Holmes returned to his cell to await execution, spending his final days writing extensively. Guards reported hearing him speak softly to himself, his words cryptic and unsettling, as though he conversed with unseen entities. The prison walls themselves seemed to grow colder, shadows deepening inexplicably, a silent testament to Holmes' lingering influence. On the day of his execution, a large crowd gathered outside the prison, braving harsh winds and rain to witness the end of the man who had terrorized their city. Holmes ascended the gallows calmly, composed until the final moment. As the noose was placed around his neck, Holmes made one last, chilling declaration, his voice carrying clearly through the silent crowd. I was born with the devil in me. I could not help the fact that I was a murderer, no more than the poet can help the inspiration to sing. And yet, even as I depart, the castle remains. Beware, for it will never cease to hunger. With those haunting words lingering in the air, the trapdoor dropped, ending Holmes' life. The city breathed a collective sigh of relief, though a lingering unease remained. Holmes was gone, but his legacy, the castle, its horrors, and his chilling final words continued to haunt the collective consciousness. In the aftermath, the castle was eventually razed, replaced by ordinary structures, yet residents whispered that its dark presence never truly left. Reports persisted of eerie noises, ghostly apparitions, and inexplicable events near the site, ensuring the legacy of H. Holmes and his murder castle would never fade entirely. Chapter 8: The Legacy of the Castle. Following Holmes' execution, the city of Chicago struggled to move forward. Yet, despite efforts to erase its horrific past, the shadow of the murder castle lingered stubbornly. Residents felt its oppressive presence, a malevolent energy that permeated the very air of the neighborhood. In the years that followed, the castle site underwent significant changes. The infamous building was demolished, replaced by unremarkable structures in an attempt to erase its sinister legacy. Yet even this drastic action failed to quiet the whispers. Reports persisted of inexplicable noises, phantom footsteps echoing down deserted hallways, faint cries of anguish drifting through the night, and chilling apparitions glimpsed through shadowed windows. Local businesses opened optimistically, only to close abruptly after a few months, haunted by unexplained phenomena. Workers reported inexplicable events, doors slamming shut without cause, objects moving mysteriously, and lights flickering ominously. The site seemed cursed, forever stained by Holmes' atrocities. Over time, stories emerged of encounters with spectral figures believed to be Holmes' victims, pale, despairing apparitions who wandered the vicinity, their expressions frozen in perpetual torment. These ghostly manifestations terrified residents, driving many to relocate and leaving others profoundly disturbed. Paranormal investigators flocked to the site, eager to uncover evidence of lingering supernatural activity. Their findings consistently pointed to a powerful residual haunting, fueled by the sheer magnitude of suffering and death within the castle's walls. Electronic recordings captured eerie voices pleading for help or expressing anguished despair, chilling evidence that the castle's victims remained trapped in eternal torment. Even skeptics found themselves unsettled when visiting the area. An oppressive heaviness enveloped anyone who lingered, instilling inexplicable dread and anxiety. Animals avoided the location instinctively, refusing to approach even when coerced. The legacy of Holmes extended beyond mere ghost stories. His crimes became cautionary tales, warnings about humanity's darkest capabilities. Schools included his story in lessons on criminal psychology, while authors and filmmakers found endless inspiration in his chilling narrative. Yet for those who lived closest to the site, the haunting was not merely metaphorical. Night after night, residents endured unsettling phenomena, furniture shifting inexplicably, walls reverberating softly with muted screams, and shadows moving independently. Many abandoned their homes, convinced that Holmes' malevolent spirit still stalked the neighborhood. Despite numerous attempts to cleanse the area spiritually and physically, the castle's sinister influence endured. Psychics and mediums visiting the site spoke of overwhelming anguish, sensing countless souls trapped between worlds, unable to move on due to their violent, sudden deaths. Ultimately, the city decided to build a small memorial park at the location. Dedicated to Holmes' victims, the memorial served as a sobering reminder of the tragedy, intended to provide closure for grieving families and to honor those lost. Yet even this solemn gesture did little to quell the site's dark aura. Visitors to the memorial often felt inexplicable sadness and unease, compelled to leave quickly. As years turned into decades, the legend of Holmes and the Murder Castle became deeply entrenched in the collective psyche of Chicago. The story was passed from generation to generation, evolving into urban legends and cautionary tales. Yet beneath the folklore lay a grim truth: Holmes' horrific legacy was deeply rooted, impossible to erase entirely. Today the neighborhood remains quiet, almost eerily so, haunted by memories and whispers of its sinister past. Residents tread carefully, respectful yet fearful of awakening dormant forces. The murder castle is long gone physically, but its chilling legacy persists, embedded in the very fabric of the city. Holmes, in death as in life, continues to cast a long, dark shadow. His final words echo ominously through time, a grim reminder of humanity's capacity for evil. Even as I depart, the castle remains. Beware, for it will never cease to hunger. And so the haunting continues, a silent testament to the darkness within us all, eternally waiting to claim its next victim. If this chilling tale of H. Holmes and his murder castle captured your imagination and sent shivers down your spine, be sure to subscribe and follow our channel for more haunting stories and real-life mysteries. Dive deeper into the darkest corners of history and uncover truths that linger long after the last word is spoken. Like, share, and leave a comment below. Tell us which chilling story you'd like us to explore next. Your interaction helps us continue, bringing you stories that grip the heart and stir the shadows within. Stay vigilant, dear listeners, because the line between legend and reality is thinner than you think. Until next time, remember, darkness waits patiently. Are you brave enough to face it?